You running drugs?
I'd rather die than tell you.
You're already a dead man.
You'll send your strangers packing. I will.
You were in a hole, and so was I.
They want us.
I have your boy. 4 words on a phone call, and the entire Dutton Ranch finale suddenly makes sense, because the man who said them wasn't a stranger who showed up in the last 5 minutes. He was the whole season. He was every dead cow, every hidden debt, every secret Beulah Jackson buried for 45 years. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who El Padrino is and why the truth is worse than anyone expected. Rewind to the morning this all started, because the finale doesn't waste a second before it starts collecting on old debts. Beth and Rip are already moving before the sun is fully up, chasing down a shipment that should have been simple. Rob Will tries to stand his ground and ends up face down in the dirt instead, and it's Beth standing over him, watching him bleed, who says the line that decides everything that comes after. She tells him if what they find is what she thinks it is, he's already a dead man. She means it as a warning. The episode has other plans for that sentence. It turns it into a promise. What they find inside that herd is the ugliest reveal of the whole season. More than 7 cattle cut open, surgical scars still fresh, and packed inside them almost 3.5 kilos of fentanyl, nearly $2 million worth of product, moving across the border 1 cow at a time. Every strange thing that happened to the Dutton Ranch this year, the mystery auction, the foot-and-mouth outbreak that wiped out half the herd, all of it stops being separate incidents. It was never bad luck. It was drug logistics, wearing a cattle brand. And once that truth is out, watch how fast the phone calls start, because this one bad morning is really the whole episode shrunk down into a few minutes. Rob Will calls his mother first, panicking. His mother calls Keno, brushing her own son off like he's not worth worrying about. Beulah calls Miguel next because she's done waiting around for her sons to handle anything. And somewhere in all of this, one man doesn't need to make a call at all, because he already made his last one the week before. This episode is what happens when that call finally gets answered. Before the day is even over, Beth tells Rip she's the one going to find Carter. He doesn't argue. He just sends her off with 3 words: find our boy. Hold on to that phrase, because it comes back in the final minutes of the season, and when it does, it will not be gentle. So who is he, the man this whole episode is named after? The answer doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in 3 separate pieces, and each piece is heavier than the one before it. The first piece is the businessman. The finale introduces Mariano Reyes down in Mexico, and at first, it plays completely fair with him. There's music, there are children, there's a blessing, the kind of scene you'd expect from a godfather in the oldest, most respectful sense of that word. He's the man an entire town leans on for help, and that warmth is real. That's exactly what makes him so dangerous, because a man who genuinely believes he's protecting his own people can justify almost anything he does to people who aren't. Then the accounting starts. Nearly 15 years ago, when a drought was strangling the ranch, Joaquin brought his mother an offer from Mariano, and Beulah said yes. From that day on, her ranch wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was a border pipeline, hiding behind a cattle brand. And only 4 people ever knew the truth: Rob Will, Joaquin, Miguel, and Tommy. Every proud speech Beulah gave this season about legacy and land was quietly funded by product moving through her own pens, which is exactly why the scene between her and Mariano in the middle of this episode matters so much. He walks into her house, calm, polite, almost gentle, and forecloses on her entire life in a few sentences. He tells her she built a kingdom in a country that hates kings, and reminds her that the house was never really hers to begin with. Then he says the line that cuts both ways: she hired wolves, and wolves don't care whose hand feeds them. That sentence works on 2 levels, and the episode wants you to catch both. On the surface, he's talking about the outside men Beulah brought in, the ones who just cost him $2 million. But underneath that, he's talking about Beulah herself. Because 15 years ago, she opened her own gates to a cartel. She hired the wolf first. The same warning that applies to Beth and Rip applies to her, word for word. Then he gives her the terms: reinstate Keno publicly, send her outside men packing, or he'll take back what he believes was always his to begin with. And, later, when he calls Rip directly, He says the quiet part out loud without even blinking. He's not coming for the cattle. He's coming for the thieves. In this man's mind, everyone north of that border owes him something. Cattle, product, sons, secrets. The entire season has been a repossession notice that nobody read in time, but the businessman alone doesn't explain the order that follows. For that, you need to see him as a father, and the lesson he gives Joaquin about horses tells you everything. He says the horse that leads the herd isn't the biggest, and it isn't the strongest. It's the one that stops waiting. Then he looks at his son and tells him he's spent his entire life standing at fences. That's not advice. That's a father radicalizing his son in 4 sentences, and it works. Then the show hands the trigger to the last person you'd expect, the victim himself. Nobody betrays Rob Will behind his back. He makes the call himself, phoning Mariano to report the morning's ambush, thinking he's proving his loyalty. What he's actually doing is proving he's still useful, for the last time. At the motel, the 2 brothers go after each other, like boys fighting over who their father loves more. And buried in that fight is a detail worth noticing. Rob Will already knows exactly whose son Joaquin is. The one thing he never finds out, the thing he dies without ever learning, is whose son he is. Mariano ends the argument between them with one word: Joaquin's name. Then, alone with his own son, he gives him 7 words that decide the rest of the episode. He tells him to kill his brother. Watch Joaquin's face when he hears it. He doesn't want to do this. It's written all over him. And he does it anyway. What follows might be the best scene this show has ever done, and it belongs entirely to the man about to die. Beaten badly, Rob Will knocks softly on his daughter's door and asks if he can come in. For a few minutes, the most resentful man in the season is just somebody's father. He tells her this place eats everything it loves and keeps the bones. He calls her the only thing in that house that isn't crooked, and then he gives her the best line of the night, telling her he loves her more in that house than he's ever loved anyone he respects. Minutes later, there's another knock at another door, except it isn't a knock, it's a pounding. In this story, love knocks softly, death pounds. A gunshot follows. The camera never shows who pulled the trigger. Upstairs, packing for the escape she'd secretly planned with Carter that same afternoon, Rob Will's daughter hears it, runs down, and finds her father at the bottom of the stairs. Through the dark outside, Joaquin's car is already pulling away. The show never needs to film the act, because the act was ordered to happen exactly like that, cold and off-screen. Mariano told Joaquin to do it, and Joaquin obeyed. That same morning, Beth called him a dead man. By nightfall, the episode made her right. When Bula comes home to find her granddaughter on the floor beside her son's body, nobody says a word. She already knows. Everyone in that house knows exactly who did this, and on whose order. Meanwhile, a few miles down the road, Joaquin stops the car and falls apart completely, sobbing alone behind the wheel in the dark. That breakdown answers a question a lot of people have been asking: whether Joaquin just became another version of Jaime Dutton. The comparison is close, but it isn't the same. Jaime killed his own father to save himself, with his sister's threat at his throat. That was self-preservation. Joaquin killed because obedience was the price of finally belonging to a father who chose him. 2 men with the same wound, but only one of them ends the night sobbing alone on the side of a highway. Bula chose Rob Will as heir over Joaquin, and not just out of love. Earlier in the season, Rob Will made it clear that if he wasn't named heir, Joaquin would pay for it with his life. She gave one son the ranch, partly to keep the other son alive. And the order from Mexico flipped that entire plan inside out. The son she was protecting became the killer. The son she paid off became the body. Alone, upstairs, Rob Will's daughter takes a pregnancy test. It comes back positive. No dialogue, barely 10 seconds on screen, and it might be the biggest setup for next season, hidden anywhere in this finale. Whose baby is it? Carter, the boy she was about to run away with, or the boyfriend from earlier in the season? The finale refuses to answer that, and the refusal is the entire point, because paternity isn't really what matters here. What matters is what that child inherits: a ranch, a pipeline, and a war that started 45 years before anyone in this story was even born. And that brings us back to the woman who started all of it, and the confession she's kept buried for 45 years. A secret that finally explains exactly why El Padrino came back, and exactly what the truth is going to cost everyone in Season 2. Bula finally tells the truth to Everett, the one person she couldn't afford to lose. She was 16 when she met a cowboy named Luke at Billy Bob's, and what he did to her ended with her taking a gun to his trailer and shooting him dead. Mariano, her father's ranch hand, helped her bury it. Her father blamed Mariano instead, forced him out, and the Jacksons quietly kept his baby son and raised him as their own. At the border, running from a crime that was never his, Mariano lost his wife too. Covering the Jackson family's sin cost him his name, his home, and his son. El Padrino isn't just a title. It's the debt this family has owed him for 45 years, and Season 2 is where he finally collects it in full.